From 1953, we're looking at another Abbott and Costello film today. This is Abbott and Costello Go to Mars from Universal International. Now, we have watched several Abbott and Costello films. We've only reviewed a couple on here, but we're going to do more retrospectives as we move forward. I picked this film because I thought it would appeal to you and Colton. We watched it the other night.
And I do like it. I love space and learning about the different planets and stuff. But they went into space. Not on purpose, but they went into space and it was funny, but I like space, so it was actually kind of cool. I like all of the bits with Costello. I think at the beginning it was kind of funny because he was doing the jet plane.
Yeah, he has a jet plane on the end of a string. He works in an orphanage, and he's out on the playground with the orphans. I said the other orphans, and he's got this jet plane on a string, and they're asking him questions about spaceships, and he's answering, but they know he doesn't have the right facts. They know more than he does about this particular subject.
And I like that, and I like how when he goes back into the trunk of the truck.
Yeah, what happens is he loses control of the jet plane and it crashes through a window. So then the police are after him. So he runs away and he jumps into the back of a truck. And that truck is driven by Abbott's character. And Abbott plays a character named Lester, and Costello's playing Orville. And Lester, he has no idea that Costello is in the back of that truck. And he drives back to this secret compound where there's a rocket ship. And they're fueling and prepping this rocket ship for a mission to either Venus or Mars. And when Abbott gets in there and he starts unloading, he finds Costello in the back of the truck. So they don't start out as a duo, but they wind up as a duo.
Right. So. And I really liked that. I liked how Costello thought that you just pull a string and the rocket ship goes up. But really, all you do is push a button and the rocket ship goes up.
He pretty much proved his point. It wasn't pulling a string, but all he did was flip a couple switches and off into space he went. So there's a little bit of mistaken identity when he gets to this compound. His name is Orville, and the scientists there are waiting for a scientist named Dr. Orvilla. So at first, there's a mistaken identity. They quickly figure out that Costello is not Dr. Orvilla, but they don't want him to leave the compound because he would be a security liability because it's a secret launch that they're trying to go through. So they tell Lester to kind of keep tabs on him and have Orville help Lester, which turns into a disaster because there's a lot of funny bits, when they're unloading the truck and they're loading the rocket ship. But ultimately they wind up in the rocket ship, and as you said, Costello, of course, starts flipping buttons and they wind up, taking off.
And I liked how when they were packing, Costello had the magnetic boots.
Yes, he's got the magnetic boots, and there's a lot of funny bits with those boots through the course of the movie, and there's a lot of them in that segment. Once they take off, of course, they don't know how to fly the rocket ship. So they're flying the rocket ship through New York City, and they go into the Lincoln Tunnel, and there's a lot of good gags. Abbott is kind of trying to fly the ship, and he's in that zero-G seat.
Right.
Meanwhile, Costello, he's got the magnetic boots on, but he's kind of flopping around the rocket ship and looking out windows, really large windows, and seeing where they're going. And he's got a great, line where he's like, "Give me 5 cents," and Abbott says, "Why?" Because we're going through the Lincoln Tunnel. There's a lot of funny bits, a lot of funny B-roll of people's reactions to the rocket ship going through New York City. And
they actually didn't go to Mars.
Correct.
But they thought it was Mars, and I thought it was funny because it was Mardi Gras.
Yeah, they land in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, so everybody's in these crazy masks.
And so they think it's just like how Mars is different and stuff.
Right, they think these people are aliens, right? So.
And everybody's saying, "What a great costume!" And they're thinking that they're on Mars, and it's like not a costume.
Right. So all the people celebrating Mardi Gras take the spacesuits that Abbott and Costello are in for costumes, and of course Abbott and Costello take all the people as aliens because again they're in these crazy masks, and so that's the timing of it. It's clever. I find it to be clever.
And then they eventually go to Venus.
Right.
And I liked what happened there with the balloons.
Yes. Venus is populated all by women, and it's all like the Miss Universe contestants of that era played all the women of Venus. And since there are no men there, the queen has banned men since long ago because she felt men could not be trusted. But the women want a king. All her subjects want a king, so she makes Costello the king, and he's got this great costume. He looks very silly. And she gives him these balloons as a test. If he looks at another woman or thinks about another woman, the balloons will pop. And if the balloons pop, she knows she can't trust him.
Right.
And of course, she leaves, and 3 seconds later, all the balloons are popped because he's surrounded by these beautiful women.
I love that part. I think that when they finally go back to Earth and how they land the ship.
Yeah, the ship winds up landing point first, like, you know, like if you were to throw a lawn dart into the lawn or something, you know, that's how it lands. There's a couple other characters in there. There's a pair of escaped criminals who they're the same type as Abbott and Costello. One's a tall, skinny kind of know-it-all, and the other one's kind of a shorter, heavier guy who's not quite as bright. Right. And so, you know, there's a little bit of mistaken identity. Those two guys rob a bank in New Orleans, but, you know, Abbott and Costello are the ones that are suspect. In any case, you know, they all go to Venus thinking it's Mars. And, you know, okay, so this film doesn't get very good reviews. It's considered to be not one of the greatest Abbott and Costello films. Now, let me tell you why I had you watch it and why we're doing this. When I was a kid, this was one of my favorites. It's fun. It's gag after gag. It's silly. It's goofy. It's fast paced. It doesn't get bogged down in the musical numbers that are very often sung in some of the other Abbott and Costello films because the guest stars would have to do a musical interlude kind of thing. So as a kid, I absolutely loved this one. As I got older and I watched it, I could see why this was judged as not as good a film as the other ones because it's a little bit of a lesser effort in some ways. However, you know, so I went through that period with this film. Watching it with you guys, I laughed a lot because I knew what you were going to find funny as it was happening. I remember the film very well. I saw these, you know, I've seen all the Abbott and Costello films 25, 30 times a piece because we used to get a channel called WPIX out of New York City. And at 11:30 every Sunday, we would sit down for Sunday dinner, and there would be Abbott and Costello, and we would watch that. It was a tradition. So I know these films very well. I could anticipate what was coming next, and I would laugh out loud knowing you guys were going to laugh at it too. So it was a lot of fun, and I think sometimes people miss the fact that kids enjoyed these films, and families could enjoy them together, and so I think this has worth in that.
Yes, it does. And I think it's very funny. I like when Costello says there are zebras with no tails, when it's actually the bank robbers.
Yeah, the escaped prisoners are in their striped, you know, jumpsuits, and the one guy's backing out of the bushes, so Costello just sees his, you know, the back of him coming out of the bushes. He thinks he's on Mars, so he thinks he's spotted this strange, you know, zebra-like creature. You know, again, it's fun. You have to let it be fun. It's comedy from the past. It's still legitimate comedy. They don't do a lot of wordplay in this, and I think maybe that's part of the reason, again, that people thought it was a lesser effort because they were playing characters. It relies more on sight gags and physical comedy, more so than the wordplay that they were known for in their other films. But I still think it's fun.
Yeah, me too. And here's how I thought of it. Abbott and Costello weren't Abbott and Costello. They were, but they weren't. So I thought that it was this movie of Abbott and Costello, but Abbott and Costello were playing a movie inside of this movie.
Right. You know, as the films moved on, they had some, you know, they were partners, and all partnerships go through tough times. You know, there was a while where they didn't get along. In some of the films they were completely separate characters and had almost no interaction whatsoever. The Time of Their Lives and Dance With Me, Henry would be two good examples of that, and Little Giant. And Time of Their Lives is one of my favorite Abbott and Costello films. And it's because they play characters, and they don't rely on the vaudeville routines that made them famous and got them into the movies. They actually had progressed and were able to act parts. And I really like Time of Their Lives a lot, but it's not Abbott and Costello. It's in here they're more. I wouldn't say they go as far as the Three Stooges with the physical comedy here, but they're a little bit more toward Laurel and Hardy or the Three Stooges versus traditional Abbott and Costello. Again, because they're not relying on their vaudeville routines, they're branching out and pushing into a different direction. I still think it's likable. I think it's fun. I think it's an enjoyable movie to share as a family, and I had a good time watching it. I rediscovered it in a way. So
Yes.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Last take.
See it.
Definitely a see it here too. You really have to not be so judgmental of it. Sit back and enjoy it as a family, and I think it's good entertainment.